Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. In 1985, just because my father handed me a marriage contract, I traveled alone to the capital to find my nominal fiancé, David Carter, from a prominent compound family. But he shut me out at the door, saying I was nothing but a petty, distant relative trying to cling to the Carter family now that they were successful. He mocked me, told me to go find the accountant myself, and sneered that my money and presents were an eyesore. I looked down at my own dusty, travel-worn appearance, then glanced at the refined elegance of the foreign-educated girl in his arms. A cold laugh slipped from my lips. In the next moment, I took out the marriage contract and publicly presented it as proof. The girl, Emily Chun, left in shame and anger, only to be involved in a traffic accident shortly after. She died on the spot. But just 3 days later, David agreed to the engagement, and even pulled strings to get our marriage certificate rushed through. We were married for 20 years. And for 20 years I lived in torment. In my later years, gravely ill and bedridden, he ordered the nurse to remove my oxygen tube. After all these years, he said coldly, "It's time we put an end to this. Go join Emily and continue repenting." When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to that day I first came looking for David Carter. Looking at his young, handsome face, I felt momentarily dazed. His crazed expression when he removed my oxygen tube in my past life was still vivid in my memory. Now, with time rewound, it was as if nothing had ever happened. We hadn't even started destroying each other yet. Fate really was full of cruel irony. Keeping my expression calm and emotionless, I said plainly, "I only came because my father asked me to. If you're not interested, David Carter, you can call off the engagement. These days people marry for love. It wouldn't be unreasonable to void an old marriage contract." David looked startled and suspicious, as if I were scheming something. "What's that supposed to mean? You're just going to give up this opportunity? Don't joke with me." I shrugged, took out the marriage contract again, and motioned toward him. "Believe it or not, that's up to you. You clearly like that girl from earlier. Why not just let the two of us go free?" I must have hit a nerve because just as he was about to nod, a girl's voice called out from not far away, "David, what's taking you so long to come home?" Hearing that voice, I paused slightly. Across the street, a well-dressed middle-aged couple approached, the woman in a fur-trimmed coat, the man in a sharp-tailored suit. Looking at them, I recognized David's parents and felt as if I were seeing ghosts from a past life. David stiffened slightly, a trace of unease flashing across his face. "Mom, Dad, something came up and delayed me," he said. Mrs. Carter, holding Mr. Carter's arm, walked closer. She paused when she saw me standing next to David. Her gaze landed on the marriage contract in my hand, and she frowned slightly. "This marriage contract?" Then suddenly her eyes shifted to my face. "Rachel, are you little Rachel?" Looking at their familiar faces, I knew I hadn't escaped fate in this lifetime either. But strangely enough, I didn't feel the need to. I nodded stiffly. "Uncle, Auntie, it's been a long time. How have you been?" "Oh my, it really is you. Why didn't you write or send a telegram to let us know you were coming?" Mrs. Carter lit up with joy, warmly taking my hand. "Your uncle and I are both doing well." Mr. Carter followed with a cheerful smile. "Look at you, all grown up now. The last time we saw you, you only came up to my waist." I gave a wry smile. "Yes, it's probably been over 10 years. Because of the ties between our families, David's parents treated me with genuine warmth. When the car drove into the Carter family's suburban villa, I couldn't help but be a little taken aback by the grandeur of the building. At the dinner table, David furrowed his brow and suddenly said, "Rachel, you did this on purpose, didn't you? You waited for my parents to show up just so you could gain the upper hand." The once warm and joyful atmosphere at the table instantly turned cold. Mr. Carter's face darkened. "David Carter, is this how I taught you to treat a guest?" Mrs. Carter scolded gently, then turned to me with a smile, placing some food on my plate. "Rachel, I remember you like short ribs. Eat more." Only after serving me did she glance over at David and remind him with emphasis, "Especially since she's still your fiancé." David's expression soured the moment his mother said that. He spoke up in protest without hesitation. "What fiancé? I don't acknowledge it. I already have someone I love. Mr. Carter gave a cold snort, clearly unimpressed. That one? The girl from the family that runs that little opera troupe. His tone was openly contemptuous. A flash of irritation passed over David's face. Mrs. Carter sighed. David, your father and I don't approve of her. That girl, Emily, she's not from a decent family. David's face stiffened in embarrassment and anger, and his gaze turned even more resentful toward me. Before things could escalate, I calmly spoke up. That's not it, Uncle. Auntie, I actually came today to call off the engagement. You want to break off the engagement? Mrs. Carter blinked in surprise, looking immediately concerned. But you've come such a long way. Why would you say that? Were we not welcoming enough? Mr. Carter's gaze shifted sharply to David. His tone turned stern. Was it you? Did you mistreat Rachel earlier? Before I could say a word, Mr. Carter slammed his hand on the table and roared. You ungrateful brat. Your Uncle Joe and I were comrades back on the battlefield. If it weren't for him taking a bullet for me, would you even be sitting here looking all proper and smug? That was a life debt. A debt that must be repaid. Do you understand? Rachel came all this way, and this is how you repay that kindness. Mr. Carter had a military background, and his temper reflected it. But the raw sincerity in his eyes stirred something deep within me, both gratitude and helplessness. It was moments like these that made me want to avoid seeing them altogether. In my last life, it was Uncle and Auntie Carter who protected me. Without them, I wouldn't have survived 20 years of a suffocating marriage to David. Their kindness to me was so great that calling them my benefactors wouldn't even be an exaggeration. I had always feared that once I saw them again, I wouldn't have the heart to walk away. What? Cat got your tongue? Mr. Carter's voice pressed on. Nothing to say now, huh? David clenched and unclenched his jaw before finally speaking through gritted teeth. Even if you owe him a favor, you can't just throw away my entire life to repay it. What am I, a tool for you and Mom to trade off? You think I should just marry whoever you say? Are you trying to kill me with rage? Mr. Carter shouted, slamming the table and standing up, face flushed with fury. Seeing that things were getting out of hand, I quickly stood and interjected. Uncle, please calm down. Even if you do feel indebted, it doesn't have to be repaid through marriage. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. I took a deep breath and continued. Besides, when my father saved you back then, he never expected anything in return. So I ask you, please grant me this request. Let me break off the engagement. As soon as I finished, David also chimed in. Exactly, Mom, Dad. I don't even like her. Forcing something like this won't end well. No one does arranged marriages anymore. It's all about freedom to love these days. Mr. Carter looked between us at my calm determination and David's firm refusal. After a long pause, he let out a deep sigh. Fine. I can't control the two of you anymore. He sat back down heavily in his chair, his mustache twitching in frustration. Mrs. Carter looked worried, but didn't try to stop us. Instead, she told the housekeeper to bring over their copy of the marriage contract. Soon after, Mrs. Carter and I stood together and burned both our copies of the marriage certificate. I watched as the red paper turned to ash, and I let out a deep breath of relief. From this moment on, there would be no more ties between David and me. David also stared at the smoldering remains of the document, momentarily lost in thought. When he came back to his senses, the look in his eyes as he turned to me was unreadable, deep, heavy. But when I met his gaze with confusion, that familiar disdain returned. The marriage contract may be gone, Mrs. Carter said gently. But Rachel, I truly like you. Stay in the capital for a few more days, will you? Let us play host at least. Out of guilt, she insisted I remain as a guest. I hadn't even had the chance to politely refuse when Mr. and Mrs. Grat Carter nodded, and added with a resigned tone. Yes, stay. Let David show you around before you leave. Otherwise, your father's wife will say we mistreated his daughter. David wasn't thrilled about it at first, but seeing his parents back down for the sake of the contract, he eventually agreed. And seeing that, I didn't object either. After dinner, I was quietly admiring the forget-me-nots blooming in the small garden when David found me first. His tone was sharp and biting. Rachel, I'm warning you. Don't get any funny ideas about me. What kind of joke are you trying to pull? The warm breeze was soft with a light chill to it, and I was greedily savoring the rare peace of being young again, free from illness and pain. Being interrupted by David now was a bit irritating. My tone turned impatient as I responded. Funny ideas? I gently stroked a flower in front of me, then stood up and gave him a cold stare. With contempt in my voice, I said, "You seriously?" Then I turned and walked away. There was no point in continuing a conversation like that. From that day on, I stayed at the Carter residence. Honestly, my parents never cared much about the engagement to begin with. They always said if I liked him, then we could try it out, and if not, we could call it off. Their main reason for sending me to the capital was to broaden my horizons. Still, I figured I should write them a letter, let them know about the broken engagement, and reassure them that I was fine so they wouldn't worry. Since I was using the study to write, David happened to walk in and caught sight of me writing the letter. He immediately sneered, "Wow, you didn't even go to college and you can write." I ignored him, continuing to write with my fountain pen. When he saw that his sarcasm wasn't getting a rise out of me, he stepped closer, then suddenly noticed the handwriting. Suspicion crept into his voice. "Where did you learn that? Your handwriting looks exactly like my mom's." "What? You trying to win her over by mimicking her script? Pretending to retreat just to get closer? Is that your plan?" I didn't bother responding. I didn't even want to waste a breath explaining anything to him. The handwriting was indeed a song-style script, and it did resemble Mrs. Carter's, but that was only because she taught me herself in our previous life. There was no need to tell David any of that. Now, seeing I wasn't taking the bait and that I was just writing a letter home, he couldn't find a reason to keep picking a fight. He stood there for a moment, then left with a cold huff. I filled 2 whole pages with my letter. When Mr. Carter entered the room with David and saw it, he smiled and praised me. "Your handwriting is beautiful, Rachel. Looks just like your aunt's." Before he could finish, David's expression turned stormy just as he was about to launch into another sarcastic remark. But then Mr. Carter's face suddenly flushed red. He took several deep breaths, but still looked like he couldn't catch his breath. "Dad." David's face paled. He rushed forward, trying to help. I froze for a moment, then quickly realized what was happening. Mr. Carter was having a flare-up of his old battlefield injury. Years ago, he'd been exposed to chemical agents that damaged his trachea. I stepped forward immediately, pressing several acupuncture points on his body and urgently told David, "David, go get the herbs right away. You'll need 3 chian of ephedra, pea root, and dried ginger, plus 2 chian each of dragon bone and schisandra. Go now." David looked stunned for a moment, then frowned deeply. Mr. Carter eventually recovered, looking pale but out of danger. He was amazed by the points I had pressed and the remedy I listed. "Rachel, you know traditional medicine too. That's incredible." I gave a modest smile. "It's nothing, Uncle. Just a wandering old doctor who passed through our town taught me a few tricks, some folk remedies, really." The truth was, back in our previous life, after over a decade of marriage to David, and with medical science progressing rapidly, I had searched far and wide for top doctors with Mrs. Carter. A renowned provincial doctor had told us this exact prescription. It was because of this formula that Mr. Carter never had another attack in that lifetime. David, still standing off to the side, let out a cold laugh. "I should have known, Rachel. You came prepared for everything. Even my father's illness. What was all that before? Some ploy to retreat in order to advance?" I didn't respond. Mr. Carter turned to him and snapped, "You little brat. Stop looking for trouble. If you're so idle, go get the prescription Rachel just gave you. Why are you always taking her side?" David muttered bitterly. The 2 of them ended up storming off in opposite directions, clearly unhappy. I knew there was no point in staying here much longer. I began thinking about my next steps. I couldn't help but wonder if I should go south and explore business opportunities. That afternoon, I went to a newsstand and bought a newspaper about the Southern economic reforms. Sure enough, the government was still deciding which cities to designate as special economic zones. The entire southern region was just beginning to rebuild. Opportunities were everywhere. My heart beat fast in my chest. For the first time in ages, I felt the thrill of possibly taking control of my own future. I was reading intently when an unfriendly voice interrupted my thoughts. What a coincidence, huh? It was Emily and David. Emily was dressed in an overly cutesy lamb-themed outfit, all dolled up and trying to look charming. David, in a gray suit, looked taller and more upright than usual. I cast them a cold glance and thought truthfully, they did look like a good match. It seemed Emily already knew who I was. She was clinging to David, ranting at him. David, what does she mean by this? Just because she used to be your fiancé, she thinks she can shamelessly move into your house. She's playing hard to get so she can worm her way in. What if it works? Then what am I supposed to do? David quickly wrapped an arm around her and tried to soothe her. Emily, why stoop to her level? She's just another woman trying to climb the social ladder. I won't let her get what she wants. I'm only ever going to marry one person. But just as he made that firm declaration, he turned his head and saw me. He froze, visibly uncomfortable. Rachel, what are you doing here? Emily turned, and her tone instantly became mocking and sharp. Well, isn't this David's cousin? Rachel, right? Let me tell you, you're nothing more than a country girl trying to latch onto the Carter family to change your fate. Give it up already. I looked at her flatly and replied coolly. You're thinking too much. David Carter, as you so proudly call him, means nothing to me. Both of their expressions shifted. A flash of humiliation crossed David's face and his expression darkened. Emily, recovering from her surprise, sneered. Really? Then why are you following us? Of all the streets in the city, you just happened to show up here. She questioned me like I had planned it. Honestly, if I had known I'd run into the two of them, I would have taken a different route to another newsstand altogether. Ignoring them, I picked up a newspaper and asked the vendor for the price. David saw the headline on the front page, something about Southern economic development, and scoffed. Rachel, you can barely read. What are you pretending for? Trying to suck up to my parents now that you know they're in business? That's a little much, don't you think? He assumed I was only reading to impress his parents. I took a deep breath, increasingly exhausted by his nonstop antagonism. That's enough, David. I'm leaving in a couple of days. I'm not here to interfere with you and Emily. Can't you stop getting in my way? Emily laughed mockingly. Leaving in a couple of days? I don't believe for a second you'd give up a life of luxury that easily. David's face turned even darker. Rachel, you disgust me. I can't stand people like you, desperate for money and status. I slammed the newspaper down on the table and turned toward him sharply. Disgusting. You think you get to say that to me? David Carter, let me remind you, it's you two who keep pestering me, not the other way around. Then I turned to Emily. And what did you call me earlier? A country chicken? What does that make you then? A chicken with a few borrowed phoenix feathers who just got here a few days before me. Her face flushed. You can't talk to me like that. David and I are truly in love. Tears welled up in her eyes and she covered her face dramatically and ran off. David suddenly panicked and chased after her, grabbing her back and whispering softly, Emily, don't go. Don't be upset. No one's thinking badly of you. I gave a sarcastic smile, and was about to say more when David suddenly punched me in the face. Who told you to talk about Emily like that? A sharp, searing pain exploded across my cheek, and I lost my balance, falling backward. But before I hit the ground, a pair of strong arms caught me. This is how you treat a woman? A deep voice rumbled beside my ear. I held my nose, stunned as something soft pressed against it. A handkerchief. Thank you. I murmured, my voice low. When I looked up, I met a pair of concerned eyes. The man was tall, his face angular and full of strength. He had an air of quiet authority and efficiency. His face seemed oddly familiar. Just as I was about to search my memory for where I'd seen him before, David gave me the answer himself. Liam Chen, what are you doing here? David snapped like a cat whose tail had just been stepped on. His whole posture bristled with hostility. And then I remembered. Liam and David were both second-generation heirs. Their fathers had both transitioned from military to business and wielded significant influence in the industry. In the previous life, The Carter and Chun families constantly clashed both publicly and behind the scenes over business interests. Naturally, the two sons didn't get along either. Right now, Liam was gently pressing his handkerchief against my nose to stop the bleeding. I came to my senses suddenly, realizing I hadn't even thanked him properly. I felt a bit awkward, so I took the handkerchief from his hand and nodded again in gratitude. Liam finally turned to David and shot out a biting remark. "David Carter, you just keep getting worse. Meddling in women's fights, hitting a woman. Are you even a man?" It was a verbal blow straight to the gut, coming from the moral high ground, and landing with full force. Unsurprisingly, Liam's words stirred the surrounding crowd into a storm of disapproval. "What's going on? He hit a woman. That's outrageous. What's happened to this world? How can a man do that? He's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic." David's expression darkened as he heard the comments around him. Unable to bear the public shame, he gritted his teeth and snapped at Liam. "What I do is none of your business, Rachel. Let's go." As he spoke, he reached out to drag me away. I immediately yanked my arm back. "No need, Mr. Carter. Just make sure to let your parents know I'm leaving. That way, you won't have to complain I've been living off your family's money." Emily looked Liam up and down, her eyes full of spite as she tried to stir things up. "So, that's why she doesn't want anything from the Carters. She's already latched on to someone else." David's expression grew even uglier. He swallowed his anger for a moment, then tried to change his tone. "At least, let me take you to treat that wound." I stared at him coldly. Liam was even more cutting. "Wow, Mr. Carter, that's quite a turnaround. Beat her 1 second, offer to help the next without even an apology. Impressive." David's fists clenched with a loud crack. Sensing the situation was slipping out of control, Emily suddenly clutched her head. "David, I feel dizzy. Can you take me to the clinic?" she whimpered. David cast one last unwilling glance at me, then nodded. I saw it clearly. Emily was giving him a way out, preserving his pride so he could walk away with dignity. As they left, the crowd around us let out boos and mutters full of scorn and contempt. Watching the two of them walk away, I had only one thought in mind. I sincerely hoped they would stay together for the rest of their lives and never drag me into their mess again. Just then Liam's calm voice came from behind me. "Your last name is Xiao, right? We haven't been formally introduced. I'm Liam Chun." I could tell he wanted to continue the conversation, but I just felt uncomfortable and wanted to leave. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chun. I have something else to take care of. Thank you again. I'll be sure to thank you properly another time." After that brief goodbye, I returned to the Carter house. While I was packing my things, David suddenly kicked the door open and stormed in. "Rachel, you humiliated me in front of everyone today. That was way over the line." I kept folding my clothes, glanced at him sideways with an indifferent expression, and asked, "Really? And what about you, David? Weren't you over the line?" David's eyes landed on the bruise on my face, and for a brief second, a flicker of guilt passed over him. I was just too angry. "You shouldn't have said those things about Emily." Seeing that he still chose to stand by Emily's side, I lost all desire to keep talking. I continued packing. "I'm talking to you. Are you deaf or what?" David, clearly frustrated by my silence, suddenly flipped my suitcase over with a loud crash. I stared at my belongings scattered on the floor, then slowly looked up at him, my tone sharp and threatening. "What the hell do you want, David?" Seeing that I was finally reacting, he tilted his chin defiantly. "What do I want? I want you to apologize to Emily." "Not a chance," I shot back without hesitation. "Keep dreaming." David's eyes widened in disbelief. And then came the explosion. "Rachel Zhao, don't be so shameless. Everything you've eaten, everything you've used since coming to the capital, you owe it all to the Carter family. Stop being so ungrateful." "I relied on the Carter family." I shot back without hesitation. "If I relied on anyone, it was Uncle and Auntie, not you, David. Have you ever spent a single cent on me?" David's face twitched at my words, visibly embarrassed, but he couldn't help trying to argue. "All of this will be mine sooner or later, so yeah, technically it's me. And you still owe Emily an apology." But before he could finish, Mr. Carter walked in and barked. "The Carter family is yours. You ungrateful brat. Can't wait for me to die. Is that it? Mrs. Carter followed him in, her face just as stern. David, your father and I heard everything that happened today. You really crossed the line. Mr. Carter's voice was full of fury. How did the Carter family end up with a coward like you who hits women? David's face turned red as he choked out a defense. She provoked me. What was I supposed to do? Besides, I only barely touched her. That doesn't count as hitting. Mr. Carter stared at him for a long moment, deeply disappointed. You can hit, but you can't own up to it. Pathetic. Really impressive, David. You've truly outdone yourself. Mrs. Carter looked equally let down. Her voice trembled with emotion. With you acting like this, how are we supposed to trust you with the Carter family's future? But David couldn't see the concern behind their anger. He just shot back. I'm your only son. What choice do you have but to stick with me? What? You want to drive yourselves into an early grave? The moment those words left his mouth, Mr. Carter's chest rose with a sharp inhale. His breathing labored again. I rushed over with Mrs. Carter to steady and calm him down. It took a few moments for him to catch his breath and recover. Once he was stable, I turned toward both of them and spoke with quiet resolve. Uncle, Auntie, I've caused you too much trouble. I'll be leaving the capital this afternoon. They could see how serious I was, and though they looked reluctant, they didn't try to stop me. Instead, they quietly handed me some money for the journey. Thank you, I said softly, bowing my head. I looked at them one last time deeply, not knowing when, if ever, I'd see them again. David stood frozen, watching me. It seemed only now did he fully grasp that I was really leaving. Rachel. His voice cracked a little. You're really going? I gave a bitter laugh. What did you expect, David? Of course I am. Let's never see each other again. With that, I picked up my suitcase and walked away without looking back. But just as I stepped outside the Carter villa, David chased after me. Rachel, wait. He grabbed the handle of my suitcase, breathless. You can't go. I stared at him, utterly confused. Why not? Weren't you wishing for this all along? Regretting it now? He looked at me for a long time before finally speaking, his voice low and hesitant. When my dad had that attack, you were the only one who could help. And my mom, she needs you too. The Carters need you. I stared at him, playing back the moment I had helped Mr. Carter with the massage earlier, and the strange way David had looked at me during it. My heart sank. I blurted out a question without thinking. Did you come back too? David was stunned, his eyes wide. After a long pause, he nodded. In that instant, a chill ran through me. I had already suspected it. Back when Emily was storming off, about to run into the street in anger, David didn't hesitate. He had reached out and pulled her back the same way he had in our past life. That same protective, desperate look. I'd only seen it once before. I had only asked to confirm what I already knew. But now that I had confirmation, there was nothing left to say. I took a deep breath, feeling suddenly exhausted. David, your parents can be taken care of. Emily can learn to do that. You don't love me, so why are you still clinging to me? We've both been given another chance. Why won't you let me go? He hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. It's not that Emily's spoiled. She's not good at looking after others. I just think you'd do a better job. Rachel, what if I make you my honorary sister? You can be adopted into the Carter family. Isn't that enough? Even now, he was willing to tie me down with a lifetime of obligation dressed up as kindness. I sneered inwardly, disgusted. I don't want that, I said coldly. You can go find someone else, whoever you want. From now on, we're walking separate roads. With that, I turned and left the Carter house for good, heading straight to the train station. To my surprise, I ran into Liam Chun at the train station. He was also preparing to head south. After a few words, I couldn't help but raise my brows. You're going south too? Liam looked just as surprised to see me. Then he smiled and nodded. Yeah. My dad said there's a lot of business potential down there, and told me to go see what I could make of it. I had to admit, his family's business instincts were sharp. I couldn't help but feel a bit of admiration. I was just about to say more when a voice suddenly rang out from the distance. Well, so this is why you turned me down, Rachel. Already found your next option. David Carter had come running in, dust-covered from travel. When he saw Liam and me standing side by side, his eyes turned red with frustration. In front of everyone, I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. You hit me. David looked stunned. For a moment, I could see the fire in his eyes, like he might lash out again. But in the end he held back, gritting his teeth. He shot Liam a venomous glare, then grabbed my arm and tried to drag me away. Rachel, he said as he pulled me, if you're willing to come back with me, I can forget about what happened with Emily. I'll let it all go. Pretend none of it ever happened. We can start over, okay? Like a bad dream that we both wake up from. His voice was low and coaxing as he spoke, step by step, trying to wear me down. But I yanked my arm away from him and laughed coldly. David, I had nothing to do with what happened to Emily. And the reason I tried to kill you back then was because you tried to pull my oxygen tube. You brought it on yourself. Don't act like you're being generous. He frowned deeply, clearly unable to process what I'd said. Anyway, you're coming back with me today. We'll figure the rest out later. Don't make things worse. How many times do I have to say it? I snapped. There's nothing between us anymore. Our tug-of-war had drawn the attention of the crowd, and people were starting to whisper. Then suddenly a sharp, shrill voice rang out from among them. David Carter, I knew it. You haven't given up on that. I turned my head slightly and met Emily's furious, resentful eyes. She rushed forward and began clawing at me, shrieking. How dare you seduce him? He was mine. I stumbled back, trying to avoid her flailing hands. In the next second, David grabbed her wrist and held her back. Emily, calm down. Let me explain. She struggled in his grip for a moment, then finally looked up at him, tearful and shaking. David, do you not want me anymore? David, flustered and drenched in sweat, couldn't explain the truth about his rebirth. He hesitated for what felt like forever before blurting out. I'm not going to marry Rachel. She just knows how to help with my father's condition, and how to keep my mom happy. That's it. I just wanted her to stay to help them. It was a weak excuse, and Emily didn't buy it for a second. Oh really? So you want to marry me, but also keep her around? David Carter, this isn't ancient history. There's no main wife and concubine anymore. Why won't you ever listen to me? David was stuck, unable to explain in a way that satisfied anyone. Every word made it worse. Just then Liam stepped forward. He had been quietly watching the whole time, but couldn't take it anymore. David, who do you think you are, trying to make her care for your parents while you chase another woman? You want to have it both ways? Liam's voice was calm, but the sarcasm in his tone was razor sharp. He was clearly trying to provoke David and drive a wedge between him and Emily. Sure enough, Emily exploded. She grabbed David by the collar and began demanding answers. The scene turned into a mess. Liam and I used the chaos as our moment to slip away and board the southbound train. As the train whistled, I said my silent farewell to the capital and everything it had held. Thank you, Liam, I said softly once we were seated. He blinked and let out a low chuckle. You don't have to thank me. It's what anyone should have done. When we arrived at our destination, we went our separate ways, wishing each other a bright and successful future. The days that followed were full of work and momentum. I saw the opportunities and seized them. My small ventures quickly grew into something larger. Still thinking about Mr. and Mrs. Carter's health, I eventually wrote a detailed care plan and mailed it to them. I didn't expect a reply, but instead of a letter, what I got was David himself, dusty, panting, and standing at my doorstep. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice sharp with irritation. Do you not understand human language, David? He gave me a sheepish smile, trying to play it down. Rachel, my parents miss you a lot. They want you to visit. It's been years, and they'd love to see you again. Just think of it as catching up. I looked at him flatly and gave my answer without hesitation. No. I doubted the sincerity of his excuse. If you're going to lie, at least try to plan it out first. In the last life, I had spent far more time caring for his parents than he ever did. So what was the real reason? David clearly had nothing left to say. Finally, he admitted the truth. It's because my parents' health isn't doing so well. My heart tightened. That's impossible. I wrote to you earlier this year. Based on the timing, your mother's rheumatism should be flaring up again, and your father would need another round of herbal medicine. I listed all the treatments clearly. David's face twitched, a trace of guilt crossing his expression. He hesitated before stammering. I got your letter, but I didn't get the chance to read it before Emily tore it up. I understood instantly. It was jealousy, plain and ugly. The mention of Emily loosened David's tongue, and frustration leaked into his voice. Rachel, now I realize how good you were. Emily, she's absolutely useless. Every time my father has an attack, she just cries. She doesn't know what to do. My mother doesn't like her either. She even went back to Grandma's house just to get some peace. What kind of life is that supposed to be? He shook his head and looked at me earnestly. Emily is only good for romance. She's not someone you can build a life with. I know that now. As he spoke, he was unusually sincere. My parents really miss you. Yes, they wanted me to ask you to come back, but it's not just them. I miss you too. Though I did still care for Mr. and Mrs. Carter. I also knew that this lifetime was different. I couldn't repeat the same mistakes. So I firmly rejected him. I'm not going back with you, David. Whatever fate we had in this life, it's over. But if your parents still need the prescriptions, I can write them again. David stared at me for a long while, eyes reddening. Finally, he gave a silent nod. But just as I picked up a pen to write the remedies, a woman suddenly charged forward and snatched the paper from my hands, tearing it to shreds. So this is where you've been, David Carter? Emily screamed. I knew it. That's why you haven't come home all these days. You came all the way south to see this. You never cut ties with her at all. Her voice was shrill, full of venom. She glared at both of us, trembling with rage. David's face paled. He gritted his teeth, trying to stay patient. Emily, can you not make a scene? I told you I came for the prescriptions. But Emily didn't care. Who's going to believe that? You think doctors can't write prescriptions? You just had to come to her. Her voice rose, hysteria building. For the first time, David completely lost his temper. With a sharp crack, he slapped her across the face. Enough. Are you done yet? Emily staggered back, stunned. You hit me, David. How could you hit me? I'll never forgive you. Tears spilled from her eyes as she turned and ran. I turned just in time to see a truck speeding by. My chest clenched. I was about to warn her, but it was too late. Bang. The sound was deafening. Emily's body flew like a kite with a snapped string, thrown several yards by the impact. Blood pooled beneath her limp, lifeless form. Emily. David froze for a beat, then let out a gut-wrenching scream and ran toward her. I took that moment to slip away. I was terrified he'd break down and cling to me again, just like in the last life. I didn't want to go through that nightmare twice, but I underestimated him. I underestimated just how far David Carter would go to find me. Just a few days later, he showed up on my doorstep again, pale, exhausted, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Rachel, he said with raw honesty. I misunderstood you. In our last life, I was wrong. I hurt you. It was all my fault. Please come back with me. I swear I'll treat you better. Even now, he didn't blame me. He accepted Emily's death and begged me to return, but I still refused. How many times do I have to say it, David? We were never meant to be. It's over. He stood there, eyes red and swollen, looking at me like the sky had collapsed. What's wrong? I asked, my voice cold. Just then, a voice came from behind me. Liam had arrived. He casually slipped an arm around my shoulders and said with affectionate familiarity, Rachel, what's taking you so long? I froze for half a second before quickly realizing what he was doing, pretending to be my boyfriend to get me out of an awkward situation, playing along. I immediately wrapped my arm around his waist and replied, Almost done here. Go wait for me. I'll be right back. David looked at Liam, then back at me. His expression was a mix of shock and resignation, though not entirely unexpected. After a long, defeated pause, he finally turned and left, face full of loss. Not long after, while I was on a sourcing trip, news reached me that David had taken his own life. There was a hint of regret in the message, and included was a letter he had left behind. In it, David wrote that he wished he could be reborn once more, to do things differently, to go back and be with me again. But I felt nothing. Even if he were reborn, we would no longer share the same time, the same space. The person he longed for would no longer be me. I sent a letter to Mr. and Mrs. Carter, carefully composed to offer them peace and comfort. Then I continued on with my work. At the end of the road, Liam was waiting for me with his arms crossed, a mischievous smile tugging at his lips. "Miss Shao," he teased. "Interested in turning this fake romance into something real?" I raised an eyebrow, looked him over for a few moments, then gave a short laugh. "Sure, depends on how you perform." Liam blinked at my smile, clearly caught off guard by how genuine it was. Then he stepped forward, voice lower now, steadier. "Rachel, I'll treat you right for a lifetime." In his eyes, I saw a kind of conviction I had never once seen in David's. Smiling, I turned to walk toward him. "Come on, help me carry these supplies." And just like that, everything settled. The dust of the past finally cleared.